Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Today, we're going all the way back to 2012 in the early ETA-powered Tudor Heritage Black Bays. It's been a while since anyone called them that. The name scheme for historic designs at Tudor, once always including the Heritage moniker, because back in 2012 when this watch launched, Tudor was still a brand on the comeback trail. I don't think anyone realized what a franchise the Black Bay by itself was going to become. These earlier watches are a lot less common than the 2016 and later manufacture movements. They're also a lot thinner and easier to wear. So let's take a dive into recent history with this watch. 41 millimeters in diameter in stainless steel, it is meaningfully thinner than later in-house calibers. Even the latest 2023 redesign of the 41 millimeter watch still has a 13.6 to 13.7 millimeter thickness. This is relatively svelte at 12.8 millimeters. It's still a 41 millimeter case, but it's thinner, and in that regard, it's a little bit more competitive on thickness with something like a Rolex Submariner. Lug-to-lug, 49.9 millimeters. We got a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll throw the watch on my wrist. Make no mistake, it's a big watch. It's a modern timepiece in spite of its many vintage pastiche elements, and it is a bit of a pastiche. More on that in a moment. You can see it fills my wrist well, but with pivoted end links, it doesn't really extend beyond my wrist. So if your wrist is, let's say, 15 centimeters circumference or larger, and mine is 16, this is going to fit fine. It is a lot flatter than the in-house calibers, and you can see that in profile. Taking a look at the bracelet, I do like the fact that this does not include the simulated rivet design, which seems a bit too cute for my tastes. What we do have, though, is a big crown, no-guard bevel case design that evokes an era when Rolex and Tudor Submariners shared these features because they shared cases and bracelets. Taking a look here, we got a 3-link design that has more than a circumstantial resemblance to the Rolex Oyster bracelet. It is very solid, though. It doesn't feel like a sister brand. It does feel like a senior product. Taking a look, you can see removable links are fixed by screws. If you have a jeweler's screwdriver, you can quickly start sizing. We have a robust clasp here, and you can see right from the beginning they were using ceramic spring-loaded pin snaps so that the interaction between the parts of the clasp, the metal, always has a ceramic pin snap because the metal cannot wear down the ceramic, and this preserves the tightness and the tolerances. You can see it's thick gauge steel. It's a single swing arm. We've got several divots inside the clasp so you can dismount the spring bar and change the anchoring point. That's a friendly feature that allow you to micro size if you find yourself in between link sizes. Now we've got a Tudor shield logo that is an element of the design of the clasp, but you can see these ETA-powered Tudors, they have the older rose logo on both dial and crown. With the in-house calibers, the shield would be on the dial. The rose seems to have gone away about mid-1968 in my experience and been superseded by the shield. What's fascinating here is that this watch is not strictly a 50s Tudor sub 1954 throwback. So we have elements of the big crown Tudor Submariners, the small crown Tudor Submariners. We also have, in addition to some 50s and 60s elements, some 60s and 70s elements, because you can see these snowflake-style hands called to the Tudor Submariner snowflake dials, the late 60s through mid-70s. We got another vintage element with the chapter ring dial, and of course there is no date, because this is a Black Bay after all. Most of those don't have that. We have a matte dial, and we have applique indices, which is an upscale feature you would not have found on a historic Tudor sub, but this is a luxury product. Of course, rotor self-winding plays on the style and variety of text seen on the original, many of which would have included mention of Inca block shock protection. And we've got a 60-click bezel that's fairly chunky, setting itself apart from the ultra-subtle 120-click Rolex dive bezels. So we have a nice sharp feel that you don't really get on a Rolex dive bezel, but you only get 60 clicks, and I guess that is Tudor's way of differentiating itself. Also, we have an anodized aluminum insert here, so it does give more of a vintage look than the polish of ceramic, and we've got nice micro knurling that is much finer than you'd see on the edge of a Rolex bezel, so it's got its own identity, but it's also a little bit easier to grip if your hands are wet, sweaty, or gloved. Case back, you can see Tudor ID. This watch is not in mint condition. It is a pre-owned piece. Along those lines, I also notice there's a very small scratch on the sapphire, so full disclosure, and no one will be disappointed. You can see rose crown with a shoulder around the stem tube that matches the color of the bezel. Inside, we've got an ETA 28242, and Tudor was refreshingly upfront about that back when these were on the market. Bidirectional winding, 4 hertz, 25 joules, 38-hour power reserve, and it has a stop seconds or hacking function. And yes, it does use rotor self-winding, winding in both directions with spring-loaded bidirectional click-type wheel systems for the differential of the rotor winding in both directions. So it's a 28224, universally serviceable, very accurate if properly regulated, and extremely durable for sports watch use. And yes, it is a 200-meter watch. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.